23rd of March 2019, North Korea seeks to split alliance between South Korea and U.S. Seoul, South Korea. North Korea on Saturday escalated its attempt to create a rift between South Korea and the United States as Washington sent mixed signals over whether it would tighten or relax sanctions on North. Ever since the summit meeting between the North's leader Kim Jong-un and President Trump in Hanoi, Vietnam, late last month abruptly ended without a deal, North Korea has ceaselessly urged South Korea to distance itself from the United States and to push ahead with joint economic projects that have been held back by American-led United Nations sanctions. North Korea's official trade has been devastated by international sanctions imposed since 2016. The country has tried to circumvent them by importing refined fuel or exporting coal through ship-to-ship transfer on high seas, a move banned under the United Nations sanction. It has also sought to undermine the sanctions by boosting economic cooperation with South Korea. President Moon Jae-in of South Korea remains eager to boost inter-Korean economic ties, raising fears at home and abroad that he may steer his government away from international efforts to enforce sanctions against the North. But in reality, Mr. Moon's hands are tied unless the United States and North Korea reach an agreement on denuclearization. The North and Washington helps to ease sanction. On Saturday, DPRK Today, a North Korean government-run website, accused Mr. Moon government of reneging on its promise to improve inter-Korean ties and giving priority to cooperation with a foreign force over cooperation among the Korean nation. The South Korean authorities' behavior is deeply deplorable, it said. The only thing that South will get from cooperating with the U.S. will be a deepening subordination, humiliation, and shame. North Korea state media has been issuing similar messages in recent days, even degrading Mr. Moon's effort. I'm not really sure if I've ever seen that word before. Mr. Moon's effort to mediate talks between his American boss and the North Korea, and advising Mr. Moon's government to throw its policy in a garbage can. Nice. Mr. Moon suffered another slap in the face when North abruptly withdrew its staff from a joint inter-Korean liaison office on Friday. The South authorities can't do anything without approval or instruction from the United States. So how do they think they can be a mediator or a facilitator? Question mark, end quote. The North Korea website, Mary said on Friday, they should know their place, end quote. Mr. Moon has dedicated his diplomatic resources of facilitating dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang, and has promoted building peace on the Korean Peninsula as his main policy goal. But his mediator's role has run into walls since the breakdown of the Hanoi meeting between Mr. Trump and Mr. Kim. He faced accusations that he had oversold Mr. Trump and Mr. Kim's willingness to give up his nuclear weapons, even as North Korea accused him of working on behalf of Washington. But Mr. Moon remains determined to keep the momentum for diplomacy alive. The Hanoi summit meeting broke down when Mr. Kim insisted that the most punishing United Nations sanctions against his country should be lifted in return for a partial dismantlement of his country's nuclear program. Before the Hanoi meeting, analysts had feared that Mr. Trump might sign onto a partial denuclearization deal and claim it a victory. But in the end, he listened to his aides' advice and walked away without signing a deal. After the Hanoi meeting, Mr. Trump has continued to reaffirm his good relationship with Mr. Kim and his willingness to make a deal. But the American president aides remain firm against lifting sanctions, arguing that it would deprive Washington of its most powerful tool to force North Korea's complete denuclearization. On Thursday, the United States Treasury Department demonstrated Washington's determination to keep squeezing the North by designating for punitive measures two Chinese shipping companies that had helped North Korea evade sanctions through deceptive methods like ship-to-ship transfer of cargo. South Korea was thrown into confusion after Mr. Trump tweeted that he ordered his government on Friday to withdraw additional large-scale sanctions, unquote, against the North. The tweet was initially taken as overruling the Treasury's announcement the day before. But United States officials later explained that Mr. Trump had been referring to additional North Korean sanctions that were under consideration, not yet formally issued. Doesn't that add to confusion? Quote, President Trump likes Chairman Kim, and he doesn't think these sanctions will be necessary, unquote. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, told reporters that raised hopes among Mr. Moon's domestic supporters who took Mr. Trump's latest move as a sign that Washington did not want to antagonize North Korea with new sanctions. Well, if you read about the news about Trump and him liking Mr. Kim, it's pretty balanced out with the fact that there's still sanctions in place with the UN. So